It was a sight that made headlines around the world. A group of white South Africans, mostly Afrikaners, disembarked from a plane at Dulles International Airport. They were greeted with cheers, American flags, and a warm welcome from supporters. It seemed like a scene straight out of a movie, but this was no ordinary arrival. This was a direct result of President Trump's controversial decision. He had granted them refugee status in the United States. Trump's reasoning? These Afrikaners were facing terrible persecution in their homeland. He painted a picture of a people under siege. He spoke of farm attacks, land seizures, and a government that turned a blind eye to their plight. This narrative resonated with his base. They saw it as a matter of religious freedom. They saw it as a fight against socialism. They saw it as a chance to help their own. But something about this story felt off. It felt like a selective empathy. It felt like a manipulation of history. It felt like America was being asked to choose a side in a conflict it didn't fully understand. To understand the controversy, we need to understand the Afrikaners. Who are they? Where do they come from? The answer, like most things in South Africa, is complicated. Afrikaners are descendants of European settlers, mostly Dutch, German, and French. They arrived in South Africa in the 17th century. They carved out a life for themselves at the southern tip of Africa. They called themselves Afrikaners, meaning Africans in their language. But their claim to the land was built on the displacement and oppression of indigenous people. They believed they were superior. They imposed their language, their culture, and their religion. And for centuries, they held onto power. This culminated in the brutal system of apartheid. It was a system of racial segregation that divided South Africa along racial lines. It relegated black South Africans to second-class citizens in their own country. And the Afrikaners were the architects of this system. They were the enforcers. They were the beneficiaries. Then came 1994. Nelson Mandela walked free after 27 years in prison. Apartheid crumbled. South Africa took its first breath of democracy. It was a moment of hope, of forgiveness, of a new beginning. But the legacy of apartheid cast a long shadow. The economic inequality, the racial tensions, the wounds of the past, they didn't disappear overnight. And in this new South Africa, Afrikaners found themselves in a strange position. They were no longer the oppressors. They were now being asked to share power, to atone for their past, to embrace a rainbow nation. Some embraced this change. They apologized for the sins of their fathers. They worked to build a more just and equitable society. But others clung to the past. They felt like they were being punished for the sins of their fathers. They felt like their culture and heritage were under attack. And this is where Trump's narrative found fertile ground. He tapped into this sense of grievance. He amplified their fears. He presented them as victims. He claimed they were facing genocide. But the South African government, led by President Cyril Ramaphosa, vehemently denied these claims. They pointed out that while crime is a serious problem in South Africa, it affects all races. They argued that there was no evidence of a targeted campaign against white farmers. Ramaphosa accused Trump of peddling a false narrative. He called it an attempt to sow division and score political points. He reminded the world that South Africa had come a long way since the dark days of apartheid. But facts, as we know, don't always matter in the face of a good story. And Trump's story, however misleading, resonated with a certain segment of the American population. Section 5. Land of Opportunity or Misplaced Hope. So here they were, these Afrikaner refugees, landing on American soil. They came with a mix of hope and trepidation. They came seeking a better life, a safer future. They came carrying the baggage of their history. But what kind of life awaits them in America? Will they find acceptance? Will they integrate into American society? Or will they remain isolated, clinging to their language and their culture? And what about the message this sends to the rest of the world? Does America now offer refuge to anyone who claims persecution, regardless of the validity of their claims? Does this open the door to other groups who feel aggrieved, who feel like they are losing their grip on power? These are not easy questions to answer. Section 6. A world divided. The reaction to Trump's decision was swift and divided. In South Africa, it was met with a mixture of anger, disbelief, and a touch of amusement. Some saw it as a validation of their fears. Others saw it as a sign of how little the world understood their country. In America, the response fell largely along partisan lines. Trump's supporters applauded him for standing up for persecuted Christians. They saw it as a blow against illegal immigration. They embraced the Afrikaners as brothers and sisters in Christ. But critics called it a blatant attempt to pander to his base. They accused him of hypocrisy, given his administration's crackdown on immigration from other parts of the world. They saw it as a dangerous precedent, one that could have far-reaching consequences. Section 7. The politics of fear and division. At the heart of this story lies a fundamental question. What does it mean to be a refugee? Is it simply about fleeing persecution? Or is it about seeking a better life, a safer future regardless of the circumstances? Trump's decision seems to suggest that it's the former. He has repeatedly used the language of fear and division when it comes to immigration. He has demonized refugees, portraying them as criminals and terrorists. He has sought to restrict immigration from Muslim-majority countries. And yet, here he was, welcoming white South Africans with open arms. It was a stark reminder of the double standards that often define discussions about race and immigration in America. Section 8. The enduring legacy of apartheid. It's easy to get caught up in the political theater of this story. It's easy to focus on the personalities involved. But we must not lose sight of the bigger picture. This is not just about Trump. It's not just about Afrikaners. It's about the enduring legacy of colonialism and apartheid. It's about the struggle for racial justice and economic equality. It's about the complex relationship between history, identity, and belonging. The wounds of the past run deep in South Africa. The scars of apartheid are still visible. The struggle for a truly just and equitable society continues. And while the arrival of Afrikaner refugees in America may seem like a small footnote in this larger story, it serves as a potent reminder of the work that still needs to be done. Section 9. Building bridges, not walls. So what now? What happens to these Afrikaner refugees? What happens to the relationship between the United States and South Africa? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. We cannot solve the challenges of the 21st century by retreating into the divisions of the past. We cannot build walls to keep out those who are different from us. We cannot allow fear and prejudice to guide our actions. Instead, we must strive to build bridges of understanding. We must embrace our shared humanity. We must work together to create a world where everyone feels safe, welcome, and respected, regardless of their race, religion, or country of origin.